This is Vibe Science, a top 100 wellness podcast presented by the Radcast Network, breaking wellness barriers and making health truly personal. Here are your hosts, Ryan Alford and Chris Hansen.
Hello, and welcome to Vibe Science. We're always taking you to your highest vibe. It's about mind, body, and energy. You know, that's why we have our guest today. We want to bring you energy. We want to bring you the latest supplements, the latest insights. We got Kris Gethin. What's up, Chris?
Hey, thank you for having me on the show, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I admire your physique for far, and then I got watching your videos, and I'm like, hey, I like this guy. I like what he's saying too, you know. So I was like, you look good, man. I look at bodybuilders like that, and I know how much fucking work they put in, and that is no joke. So hats off and kudos. I know you work your ass off to get to do the things you've done.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, I don't consider it work though, because I feel it's a necessity for me. You know, for me to not go into the gym means that life is going to be a white knuckle ride. So it's more for mental stability more than anything. And obviously the more that I push myself in the gym, the better that I feel after. So I love anything that's challenging, you know?
Yeah. I know you're originally from Wales. You know, talk to me about what's the biggest difference for someone, you know, like Wales and in the UK. I mean, we're all so modernized now. It's not that different, but you obviously, what keeps you in the US, and what was it like growing up in Wales?
So growing up in Wales, you know, I loved it growing up. You know, I raced motocross from the age of 6 to like 10, and I grew up on a farm, had a lot of adventure. I was an only child for the first 9 years, and I absolutely loved it. But then as soon as I got into my 20s, I just wanted to get out of there because I felt that there was no opportunity for me as a qualified personal trainer and sports therapist. Luckily, those qualifications that I had were internationally recognized. So then I was able to fly the coop. But now as I'm older, I appreciate Wales so much more. You know, the clean air, the people, very down to earth. It's kind of like Middle Earth, the land of the hobbits. You know, we're all pretty short. I'm like the tallest in my family at 5'8". But, you know, just really good people. And there's just not much in a way of rurals, you know, cities. It's definitely much more rural. And, you know, when you're in nature, you just feel better. So, other than that is great, but the weather sucks. You know, it's raining quite often.
Yeah. Now we're in Boise, Idaho, which is, you know, when you first said that, when we were talking pre-episode, you didn't strike me as a potato guy, which is, you know, what I think of when I think of Idaho. Yeah, I don't know. That's
funny. Yeah, it's known of potatoes, isn't it? But yeah, I'm not a huge potato person, to be honest with you. But I love the 4 seasons. I love camping. I love mountain biking. I love hiking. I love hitting the lake in the summer. You know, just all these things that are available to us. And, you know, there's a ski slope next to me, like 30 minutes away. And then there's a really good, like an hour and a half away. So I just love the adventures that you get in a place that offers 4 seasons.
What nature or nurture, Chris, for you in what has become, you know, a health focused lifestyle, you know, and journey throughout your career? I mean, was that just innate in you that got unlocked? I mean, what turned that on?
It was definitely injuries from motocross. This is a crazy thing. While I was racing motocross, of course, I had to keep my weight down as light as possible. So it was a lot of cardio, a lot of mountain biking, running, etc. A lot of time on the bike. But I used to purchase as a kid bodybuilding magazines, because I was never really into comic books. I liked a little bit of Judge Dredd, but other than that, I loved seeing these real life comic book heroes. You know, I thought it was just fascinating. So I don't know if that kind of planted the seed, but when I suffered an injury to my spine. I've got a major curvature of my spine. I saw osteopaths, physical therapists, and it wasn't until I started doing physio through resistance training that I started to get alleviated of the discomfort and the pain and the depression that I was going through because of the pain. So it was very elevating for me. So that's why I decided to go down that pathway and then, seek knowledge by going to college, so I could learn more about feeling better about myself, and that's kind of what's got me hooked on it since. And yeah, of course, the aesthetics, that was important for a while, especially when I was competing in natural bodybuilding. But further from that, I just like to look at prioritizing a health now, because when I was in school, I failed everything. I hated school. I couldn't retain content. But as soon as I started eating a little bit better, starting the day with movement, et cetera, I was able to retain content so much more efficiently, and that's why I loved college, and then, successfully completed that course, which I never would have several years before.
Yeah. And it's interesting when I think about that journey of it's the aches of the body that enlighten the mind to go search out those solutions. And then sounds like a passion developed. It seems like the more people I talk to, the traumatic events, sometimes, bad habits, sometimes, again, injuries. It seems like that is a lot of the starting place for these transformations that happen. And then from there, when someone starts to really take care of themselves and unlocks their brains and the passion for these types of things, then it's like the world is your oyster. You just go at it. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, you have to try before you buy, right? A lot of people may look at it from the outside in and think, it's very egotistical. People slinging around weights in a gym or, prioritizing the way that they look or anything like that. But as soon as they experience that, it's like, okay, I never want to go back, because now I feel like I have more energy. I have more confidence. I have more mental stability now. I have my strength back, whatever it may be. There's so many more benefits to it that has a transcendence effect on other areas of your life. And, of course, who doesn't want to feel better? Who doesn't want to think clearer? Everybody does, but a lot of us have become accustomed to this is as good as it gets because I don't know any different, and, that's why I always tell people, like, everybody should be working out if you want to increase your bone density, if you want to live a longer, healthier life. You don't necessarily have to go to a CrossFit box or, compete in a bodybuilding show or anything like that. But as long as you have some sort of movement, they've studied, the blue zones, and in Okinawa, the people there that live to a disproportionate age, centenarians, they'll sit and stand on the floor on average 50 times a day. That's their resistance training. They're not losing their balance and breaking a hip and dying 6 months later. So I encourage everybody to get some type of movement in, because, of course, you're not only you're going to feel better, but you'll look better as well. Your skin's clearer. You're not looking like you're aging as much as, like I look at people that I grew up with and I go back, I'm like, damn, they look old, but they're the same age as me, but they've lived a very different life. You just have to choose your poison.
Yep. Talk to me about the DTP training technique. I know, you've done these things so long, you've developed, your own plans. How do you work with people, and what is the technique?
Okay, so it stands for Dramatic Transformation Principle. I just coined that because I came across this training protocol by accident due to injuries. I was training. I don't know if any of your listeners would have heard of Dorian Yates. So I was training like Dorian Yates style, which is very, very heavy duty. I got to know Dorian really well and I really liked his philosophy. But what I realized is that my body just could not take it. I'm very much smaller boned. Of course, I've had a lot of previous injuries. And I figured, well, I don't want to stop training because that is like my AA batteries. It keeps me very mentally balanced. So what can I do to work around these injuries? So I thought, okay, well, I'll just do like 50 reps instead of 5 or 15 reps. so I don't have to put so much stress onto the joint or the connective tissue. And then when I did so, and like the next week, let's say I felt a little bit better, then I'd do the 50 and then increase the weight to like where I reach failure at 40 repetitions, and then 30, and then 20, and then 10. So I decided to do a protocol that had a pyramid style. So you'd start off at like 50 reps as your first set, 40 reps as your second set, 30, 20, 10, and then you do 10 again and work your way back up, obviously having a rest interval between those sets. But I found that my body responded way better to that. It was very simple. It was basic. You could do it in a hotel gym. And that my body was taking a better shape. I was getting a little bit more fuller. I was looking a little bit more denser. You could see the inserts in the muscle group from one to the next being more defined. So I thought, okay, maybe there is something to this. And I started training other athletes and bodybuilders doing the same kind of protocol. And they found that they were able to get just as good results, if not better, but work around injuries or prevent injuries. So that's kind of how it come about. And it is very, very taxing on your central nervous system. So I do suggest to people, maybe do it 4 days straight, possibly 5 if you're really sleeping well, if you're in a parasympathetic state, and then take a day off and then hit it again.
So high volume. So reps is what
high volume and high intensity. So very short rest periods, especially when you're doing the higher repetitions. When we start going to the lower repetition range, the rest periods are extended a little bit to ensure that we replenish our ATP, because that is going to be the primary source of fuel with the lower reps.
Are the lower reps heavier weight?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So it's all weight driven. So high rep, but very low. I mean, if you're doing 50 reps, it's probably, I don't know what percent of your max. It's a lower weight, but you still should go as heavy as you possibly can to reach failure at that 50. So I usually try to pick a weight where I'll reach failure at, say, 40 repetitions, but then I'll pause until I get to 50, if that makes sense. So failure is still achieved regardless of the weight. Yep. And when you get to the lower reps, I mean, are you getting to, I imagine it's less than what it might have been if you were only doing low reps, right? If I did 3 sets of 15 of something, that weight might be up here. But by the time you've done the 50, 40, 30, you get down, it's more than the 50, but it's less than it would have been otherwise, right?
Oh, for sure. Like if I was to go into, like 10 reps after just warming up, I'm going to be so much stronger going into that first working set than say I've done 5 sets before that. That was high repetitions in particular. So yeah, you're going to be more fatigued. But the great thing is that you're not going to put as much stress on your connective tissues, tendons, ligaments, your joints, etc. But you're still going to reach failure within the muscle. The muscle doesn't always recognize the type of trauma. It just recognizes trauma. So you have myofibrillar hypertrophy. You have sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. One or the other is kicking in.
And that actually goes, I mean, I think there's a lot of styles and techniques now. So I don't want to say that it's going against the mainstream, but it is in a way, because I think a lot of people still just think heavier weight, bigger muscles, right? I mean, it's just not accurate,
and you'll see,
right?
You'll see a lot of bodybuilders now go into more volume, more intensity. Arnold used to train with a lot of volume and intensity. It was only until like Arthur Jones and then Dorian Yates and these kind of guys and Mike Mensa really focused on the heavy duty, and that's where it kind of become popular. But then as injuries started to set in, people looking for more longevity in this sport, and people are definitely older in bodybuilding compared to what they were many years ago, where people would achieve championship status in their early 20s. That's not happening until their mid 30s now. So of course, people want more longevity within the sport, so then they have to train accordingly.
Is there age? Does age have a play a role in this, or does it really matter? Like, is it just as far as this type of style working for someone?
So it all comes down to their recovery more than anything. If somebody is in their 70s training this way, of course, they're not going to train with the same intensity as I am in my 50s. You know, it's going to be different either way. You know, the amount of weight that they're able to push is going to be lessened. But it all comes down to that person's recovery and the way that they're living their life. If they're sleeping well, if they're in a parasympathetic state, if they're controlling their environment, they're hydrated, you know, their nutrition's in place, supplementation, then of course they can still push it as well. I always look at people's biological age more than their chronological. Chronological only matters on your driver's license, you know. Biological, that really matters because that tells me the basis of your health within. You know, of course, I'll look at DNA, I'll look at blood, but biological age test is usually the one. And you mentioned earlier, you know, people usually come to me for change if they've seen a fit picture of themselves and they're out of shape, or they have a hospital visit and they have a doctor scare. This is why I try to get all my clients to do a biological age test, because when they see, or if they see, that their biological age is much higher than their chronological, usually that scares the shit out of them. They're like, tell me what to do. I want to do it all, you know?
Yeah, immediately. That's the wake up call right there.
The quantification is like carrying little personal trainers with us everywhere. You know, we have these smart rings and smart watches and 24-hour blood glucose monitors. They're all basically keeping us accountable.
Yeah. How long, you know, I know that just like what you're doing now, and if you're not, you need to be watching the YouTube so you can see Kris getting his steps in on our channel. You know, he's multitasking. He's I like to call it you eating your own dog food. That means taking your own advice.
I like that.
Yeah, but Kris, how long is the right time to train? And I know it comes back to the caveats of, like you said, rest and all that. But like for your techniques, I mean, are we talking 30 minutes, talking an hour? You know, like what's the optimal workout?
It's going to be around 45 minutes. But then if you're training a larger muscle group like legs, it's probably going to be closer to an hour because the legs require so much more oxygen in order for you to recover in between sets. But it's usually 45 to 60 minutes. And then the frequency is usually 4 to 5 days a week. You know, any more than that, your chances are you're going to overtrain. I train natural athletes, nobody that's really enhanced to assist with their recovery. So 5 workout days are usually the max, but it has to be quality. You know, you can't go in there and just go through the motions or socialize and piss around on your phone and think that you're going to get those results. You have to go there with that intention that this is going to be painful. It's going to be very, very uncomfortable, but you're going to encompass that and, you know, and push better than what you did the week before.
What about like the speed of reps? Like I would think, you know, like me naturally, I think that's the way I train. If I was going in there and I knew I was doing 40 or 50, I think my natural, I know better. I think my natural reaction would be whatever I was doing, you know, to maybe speed it up. Is there a trick to that, or is it best to go slow or fast?
So you hit the nail on the head. The lighter you're going, the faster you can go. Now, of course, it shouldn't be ballistic, so you take the tension away from the muscle and it's just all momentum, but it should be much faster because what you're trying to do is promote blood flow and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which comes from the massive pump, basically. You're going to get that with lighter weights, but faster reps. You know, you're getting a pump. But then as you put in more stress onto the tendons, the ligaments, the joints, you need to be a little bit slower on that negative. You can still be explosive out the positive to engage as many muscle fibers as possible, but it should be a little bit slower because now you're, you know, putting yourself in a position of compromise. You could be injured. So you need to take it a little bit easier. But in saying that, you're going to have people that I know that are competitive bodybuilders like Branchwar and Johnny Jackson. That's how they train. They just train balls to the wall with a lot of ballistic movement in there. You can't say it doesn't work for them. You know, Branchwar, you know, won the Arnold Classics a couple of times. He got second in Mr. Olympia, but people will always hate on his style. You know, you can't follow somebody's other style aimlessly because he's been powerlifting since he's a teenager. He's, you know, since a developing age, he's been able to create much more strength in his tendons and ligaments than other people. Same as Mike O'Hearn. You know, the guy trains unbelievably heavy, heavier than what Ronnie Coleman used to train, but he trains very controlled and very precise. And his focus is only on strengthening his tendons and ligaments, not really caring about his muscles. That's just a byproduct of what happens with his training.
There's talking with Kris Gethin. He is the co-founder of Unmatched Supplements. Kris, I mean, you've seen it all in the industry. You've seen the rad, the bad, and the fads. I mean, that's kind of the nature of health and fitness. What stood the test of time? You know, and I'm going to give you a second to think about that. Let me expand a little bit on what I'm asking. You know, like between it, you can go down the path of supplements, diets, or exercise. Amongst all the things that have kind of come and gone in your mind, what's kind of stood the test of time?
So when it comes to supplements, it's going to be creatine. You know, that's the most studied supplement out there, an amino acid. So I'd say creatine has stood the test of time since I got into weight training through, you know, its phosphagen, through EAS and, you know, all these old school brands. You know, that has been proven time and time again to have so much more benefits. And now we're seeing more and more in studies how it's neuroprotective. It's great for the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. And then when it comes to nutrition, the one thing that has stood the test of time is that stick to natural whole foods. I don't care if you're keto. I don't care if you're paleo, you know, or whatever your shtick is, carnivore, as long as you're eating single ingredient foods that your body can recognize it because you can spell it. You know, if you're looking at foods on the back and you can't pronounce them, then your body's probably not going to recognize it either. And that's obviously an issue that we see with people's health today. So I'd say it's those two things that have stood the test of time. I always tell people, just have variety. You know, if you're eating something off your plate, try to think of the rainbow, get as many colors on there as you possibly can. You know, some people will try to avoid like what's called oxalates or plant defense mechanisms like lectins and whatever. But I believe if you expose your gut microbiome to these types of foods, then your body or your gut produces more strains of bacteria to better take care of that.
Yeah. Dave Asprey is a friend and has been on our show and on my other show. And he hates the legumes and all that stuff. And,
the dark shades, the oxalates. Yeah, I know Dave as well. Yeah, I know he's a big proportion of that. But
I don't necessarily follow it, but I know that I agree with you. Like that's what some people just swear by that, and I just don't know if I agree with it. But
I think, you know, each to their own. I'd never be so bold and brash to say it's just my way or the highway. You got to figure out what works for you, you know, like some people may think it's woo woo, but I find that I'm very electrosensitive. So if I'm staying in a hotel, like in Dubai or Vegas or whatever, I find, you know, the huge amount of Wi-Fi because I have a EMF reader that I travel with. It disturbs my sleep, my heart rate variability, the quality of my sleep. Whereas my wife, it won't affect her whatsoever. So I just feel that you need to see what works for you. If you feel that sluggish, you're bloated or whatever it may be, then maybe stay away from those oxalates or lectins or whatever it may be. But I at least say expose yourself because a lot of these allergens come from non-exposure.
Kris, I'll flip the question around. We talked about what stood the test of time. You know, you co-own a supplement company. You obviously believe in supplementation to, you know, assisting in health span and longevity and all these things. What's got you the most excited? What's new and actually works?
I'd say what has got me the most excited is paraxanthine that Shawn Wells was able to isolate from caffeine. And because it's shown that it has all the positives of caffeine, it gives you a euphoric energy boost. However, it doesn't have a lot of the negatives of caffeine. And when I say negatives of caffeine, I'm talking about overconsumption of caffeine, you know, because it can raise your cortisol levels. It can have a diuretic effect. If you're a slow caffeine metabolizer, then that's going to affect your ability to recover or sleep. which is then dictating your performance. So, we're exposed to a lot of harsh artificial lights, which flicker raises our cortisol levels. And then obviously if we're working out, that's raising our cortisol levels. So the last thing that we want to do prior to working out, for instance, is have higher cortisol levels. So I don't believe that caffeine really should be in place prior to your workout, because cortisol is catabolic and it can increase insulin resistance. So if you're trying to build muscle or burn fat, then it can go in the opposite direction, but everybody's different. And here in the US, people are always drinking energy drinks, these crazy 4 shots in their coffee and not drinking enough water. And it can cause some adrenal fatigue. So paraxanthine, I'd say, is the one thing that I'm really excited about. And this other ingredient that has been combined with creatine is called guanidinoacetic acid, GAA. They have found that combining both of those really crosses the blood-brain barrier much more efficiently than creatine by itself. And also it gets absorbed into the cell through 4 different pathways, as opposed to one single pathway with standardized creatine monohydrate. So if you have some people that are like non-responders to creatine, the chances are they're going to be responders to the creatine combined with GAA.
I've never heard of that. I'm learning stuff every day. And Creatine? Is that
Creatine? That's the brand name. So it comes from Serbia.
Okay. Is that do you offer that with it Unmatched?
Yeah, we're the only people in the US that has that. It's we're exclusive.
There we go. And let's talk. So for our audience that may back up, creatine, we have a pretty affluent audience, but they'll probably know what it is. But you talked about it. I mean, so muscle growth, I heard brain benefits. And so the GAA is helping the absorption, correct?
Yes, to across the blood-brain barrier. So not only it does absorb through 4 different pathways, so more efficiently, it does become more neuroprotective and provides more nootropic benefits. And that's where a lot of the studies are actually going to now. Like ever since these studies started circulating more and more, our creatine sales have been by far the number one by all of our products, our line. It's just, everyone seems to be going towards creatine more than ever. And probably not just from from Unmatched, but from other companies too.
Yeah. How do you feel about all the research and all the stuff that's happening, like peptides and all that stuff? Where do you fall in that camp?
Yeah. So I've been a huge fan of peptides for about 8-9 years now. I think they're absolutely awesome, specific to that person's needs. So if that person has higher kidney levels, they want to help their pineal gland, they want to reduce their biological age, which helps with the lengthening of their telomeres, or they have injuries, then peptides have phenomenal benefits. So I take BPC157, and, through oral and injectable, because it's just so good for my injuries, my tendons. Now, is it as good as stem cells? If I fly to Mexico and have stem cells? No. But it's going to cost a lot more for me to get those stem cells, and it's going to be much more invasive. So I think it's phenomenal. And, we have what's called peptide bioregulators as well, which are mostly oral, but that can really help with the brain drive, memory recall. There's a peptide that's specific for eye health. So I know there's a couple of people in the UK that had a degenerative disease, meaning that they would have been blind by the time they're like 19 or 18, but now they're 25 years old and still have perfect eyesight. So I think there's a lot to be said for peptides when used in the right environment.
Yeah, it's crazy how individualistic from liver, like what you can target with each one. I mean, I've been reading a ton of that. We've had people on the show, but just how specific of, problems or opportunities, as you call it, to improvement that they can target. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So you have people that maybe have thyroid issues. Let's say they're on thyroxine or, some sort of medication. Sometimes people will take the peptides and be able to get off their medication. So, some people say, hey, well, I don't want to be dependent. Well, wouldn't you want a better life if you are dependent on this as opposed to medication? So, I think it's great.
Yeah. How about on the other side of that coin? Not something you probably have to worry about with all the activity, but the weight loss peptides. It seems like it's a slippery slope. Like in one ways, you want people to lose weight, and if it's improving heart health and diabetes and all that, great. But then I don't know. Is it a slippery slope, or is it all good?
Well, I guess it all depends what peptide it is. So, you have, what's it called? A6304 or something. That's one sequence of amino acids that helps mobilize fatty acids. And then you have these growth hormone secretagogues like testosterone, ipamorelin that can help mobilize fatty acids. I don't see any issues with that. Should that person have a requirement for it? I've got a friend of mine who did a stack of these different peptides, and he'd been trying to lose weight for years and years and years. He actually lost weight. Maybe that gave him the accountability to eat cleaner because now he's spending all this money and he doesn't want to waste it. Who knows? But then when you have things like these GLP-1 agonists, such as semaglutide, that's where I have an issue, because there's people that I know, for instance, that have been on semaglutide for about a year and a half, yet the doctor has not given them any suggestions on what they should eat, any suggestions that they should exercise because now they're losing muscle mass and bone density. None of that. So one of these individuals is still eating crap, eating shit. They haven't really lost weight, but they're eating less of the crap. So I think it's a wrong mindset for a lot of people. Like, there should be a nutritional protocol. There should be an evaluation after, say, 3 months. It should be regulated a lot more because, obviously there's financial gain to it. So I'm always very suspicious to something that has massive gains.
Yeah. Especially in the workout world, right?
Yeah, exactly. Looks can be deceiving sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Kris, talk to me about what you're doing with Unmatched and the supplement company as a whole. Like, what's your vision and where are you guys going with it?
Yeah, so we launched it about 5 months ago. The response has been awesome. Like, we're sold through all vitamin shops. I've been on the Vitamin Shop Wellness Council for quite a number of years. So, it's great to work with them. And, we're sold in Dubai, in India, UK. The demand has been really, really good. So our focus now is just to expand the SKUs, the lines. So we're working on a collagen. We've actually formulated these products now that I'm mentioning: a collagen, an AM and PM fat burner, a testosterone optimization supplement. There's a fermented glutamine, for instance, and we're actually working on like a healthy snack mix and meal replacement bar and protein bar as well. Again, all naturally sweetened. So, there's quite a lot that's in the hopper, a fiber supplement, etc. So that's the next step. That's keeping me busy. So I've got to do a lot of content surrounding that as well. I've got a gym franchise in India. I've got another gym opening happening in March, straight after the Arnold Classic. So these things are keeping me busy. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to say no to a lot of speaking engagements so I can actually enjoy Potato Land here of Boise, because I spend my summers away. I spend a lot of my winters away. This time I want to stay put.
I love it. Yeah. More mashed potatoes for Kris, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's time to carb load, man.
Yeah, exactly. Kris, where can everybody keep up with everything you got going on, your supplement company, et cetera?
It's probably best if people go to my Instagram. That's the best hub. And if people have any questions, they can message me there, which is Kris, Kris, Gethin, Gethin.
Great. Kris, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Love what you're doing. Appreciate your energy and just the vibe in general.
Of course, man. Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Hey guys, you know where to find us, vibescience.com. We'll have links to all of Kris's stuff, Unmatched supplements. Get you some creatine with GAA from Unmatched. We'll see you next time on Vibe Science.
The content discussed on this show is provided for reference and educational purposes. The content is not an attempt to practice medicine or provide specific medical advice. Always consult your personal physician for medical advice and proper diagnosis.
Thanks for listening. This is Vibe Science. To learn more or watch full episodes, visit vibesciencepodcast.com. Here's to discovering your highest vibe.